continuation of the last segment here, which is IBC in action, and then life happens. Things go south. My plan was to pump this thing full of money, take a loan out, but we're going to assume instead of repaying that loan and paying it back with extra interest, well, what happens if everything goes south and I can't pay it back? Then an example where I can't pay it back and I can't make payments into the policy premium anymore, because life does happen. So what we're going to look at first is we've got our model that represents the same $40,000 a year going into the policy. This is identical to what we started with in the last video. So let's just look at that very quickly. There's my 5K base premium. So this represents my contributions, break even, the same as the last video. If you haven't watched that one yet, I'll encourage you to look at that, because the reason this is not positive by year 4 is I'm not optimizing this. This was an IBC case study where I deliberately built in more mech space, more window room, the capacity to pay in $50K a year. But we're only paying in 40, so we're not maxing it out yet. That's why the crossover is just about year 4 instead of between years 3 and 4. But this matches all the same values. So what we're going to look at next is that same $100,000 loan. Software update must have impacted the screen a little bit, but that's okay. So the last model, that might be small, we had the 100K loan and then payments of 20K. Here, we're not going to repay anything. Here, we're not going to model the extra interest, the extra $10,000 payment. That's what we're going to look at first. This is scenario life happens 1. We're going to look at one that's a little bit worse than this next, because I want to be prepared for that. All right, let's make some numbers here. Okay, so here we've got our model that represents scenario A. Always start with this regardless of what company I'm looking at and who I'm working with. What's the policy look like when I just pay money in and let it sit and grow? Compared to scenario B, where I take out that $100,000 loan and my original intent is to repay it, perhaps with extra interest. I want to practice IBC. So here's the 100K loan coming out, and then I take that loan out, life happens, things go south. I cannot repay it. We'll assume for this example, I can still make the 40K per year contribution, but I do not have the capacity to pay that loan. So after a full year at 6%, that loan balance grows to 106. There's the loan interest accruing each year. I'm not paying any of this loan interest. Balance keeps accruing. Now I'm still plugging in 40K. I mean, in reality, what happened here is I paid in a total of 400K and I pulled out 100. So when I compare it to the example on the left, it won't be as attractive in terms of my cash value. Let's look at my age 60 value. Won't be as attractive, but I'm still going to come out ahead. So I technically paid in 400, pulled out 100, so my net outlay here would be what? 300K. In this example, on the left, with 400 in, no loans, just growth, 703 in cash. Death benefit 1.6 compared to over here. I've paid in 300, I've got 450 and 1.3, almost 1.4 in death benefit. One thing just to emphasize here, these values are net values of the loan. So I see this loan balance at 254, meaning if I die at age 59, year 20 here, the net payout is $1,387,000. That factors in satisfying the loan already. So there is an impact. That's a substantial impact when I look at not paying a loan. Now at the same time, for a safe tax-free account, my values keep going up. I pull the money out of the policy and it didn't hurt me in that respect. Things keep moving forward. Let's make the scenario a little bit worse, because life does happen. What we're going to do, prepare that just to copy side by side. We're going to go into our design software let's copy the one we just created. So in the Policy Design tab, I'm going to keep my payments the same. Actually, I'm not going to keep them the same. 41 through 5. Let's stop payments in year 5. This is going to be the year I take out that policy loan. We're going to assume not only can I not make repayments, but I can't pay anything in. So there's a $100,000 loan. Another thing I'm going to want to do here is reduce the death benefit earlier and cut the expenses. All right. A lot going on here. So just to go through these stereo instructions quickly. Excuse me. This is the same policy with $40K a year going in, the ability to pay in 50, so I did not optimize it. I pull out that $100,000 loan, and then immediately I'm unable to make any repayments. So my loan balance grows here, loan interest is tacked on. Now if I look at my cash value, so I paid in a total of 200, technically 40, then I pulled out 100. So my net input would be what here? 100K. So I still have a substantial amount of insurance and a positive return, but the growth, not that strong. That loan interest is creating a lot of drag. So let's compare this side by side so I can see the impact. Now I still accrue a positive return, which is good, but I do see the impact. And I want to see this up front. This way I don't have any ill surprises thinking, hey, wait a minute, this is not how it's supposed to work. Well, education is very valuable. Okay, so here we're going to look at the same scenario that we just created. Firstly, 40K for what? Instead of 10 years, 5 years. I pull out that $100,000 loan. So I got to make a quick cleanup here. This is 100. And why did we see this annual loan each year? I'm not pulling anything out. This is from the software. It matches the loan interest. This means the policy is borrowing from itself to pay for that loan interest. My out-of-pocket is 0. So I stopped after year 5. Now, as the years progress on, what I want to be aware of, what's my cash look like? Because I'm technically in 100,000. I paid in 2, I pulled out 100. If we look at the same mark we've looked at on all of them, year 20, here I go. 128 in cash, death benefit is 632. So yes, I still come out ahead, but then the reality of it is I've paid in $100,000 and I've got a $28,000 gain over 20 years. Right? Not that strong, but I did not lose money. If I come into a windfall and can repay the loan, boom, it's going to be very attractive again. Also, I can add more money to the account. So I can still use it, but this is the kind of stuff I just want to be made aware of, prepare for it in the event that life happens, because it happens to everyone. What are the drawbacks? The last video highlighted the advantages. Here's what it looks like when I pay money in, let it sit and grow, borrow and repay, stuff extra payments in there. This is great. I want it right now. Then I look at this example, which is not so great. The growth sample looks great, but when I look at the no loan or the loans and no repayments, that starts to take away the attraction. And this stuff can happen. I just want to be made aware. This concept works. Cash value life insurance works well. That's why it's used so heavily. But be aware of the pros and cons, and that simply prevents buyer's remorse down the road. Hopefully this was a help.